Hi there, LinkedIn family. Jonathan here with episode 2 of Mental Illness from an HR perspective, joined again by Jacqueline and Kur. And in this episode, we're going to look at mental illness and how it affects work, how it affects us at work, and some of the dangers associated with it. So let's go first to... Hi there, welcome back. Day 2 of our episodes. We're heading over to Jack, Ellie.
Thank you, Jonathan. The topic that we're discussing today is the impacts of mental illness at work and work from home. So being in industry a lot, I have noticed or observed that there have been persons who actually are exhibiting high levels of stress in the workplace for various reasons. So a lot of times with management, they're not readily able to identify if someone is in distress. A lot of times they come and say, oh, well, Joe is having some performance issues. So having a background in IO psychology, my first question to them is we need to really look to see if there's any other factors involved outside of performance. So usually, if people are exhibiting, patterns or behaviors that are outside the norm for them, that usually is an indicator that something is wrong.
Kur, you were speaking about in your planning role. Can you describe what you were able to see where performance seems to be the underlying issue?
Well, I would say that personally, I haven't really had any very serious mental health issues, or haven't really actually struggled with stress. But for example, when an ordinary person has to stand up in a public meeting and say something that matters to him, explain, for example, what I don't want to have in my backyard, or what I want to have in my backyard. So what overtakes very often is anxiety. What happens is that person becomes stressed. And when we look in general, some stress as such in workplaces is actually much more common than most people realize. And I think people haven't really looked at two different numbers. I've seen that around 70 to 80% of people in workplaces are stressed. And for example, Gallup has made studies that about 70 to 80% of people in workplaces are not engaged.
Right.
And my question quite often is that, can you see the overlapping statistics? Can you see that people actually might have a reason why they are not engaged, and the reason is actually stress?
Okay, so then, Jackie, you were talking about these behaviors that you can see. What are they?
A lot of times, as Kur mentioned, the employee is not engaged. They're not their usual active self, their productivity level, like if they're, say for instance, if it's a welder, they may not be doing as high of output as they once were. A lot of times they're distracted or can't keep up with time. So a lot of times managers feel like that could be a performance issue. But usually I try to, talk with them a little more to try to understand if there's something. It's kind of like with employees, they're almost like your children. You know what they will do and you know what they won't do. So one of the main focuses for my dissertation was to be able to assist managers in being able to understand or recognize when their employees are in distress. So that way they can determine that it's not a performance issue, but they need to have extra support for organizational support.
Okay. I know that I have worked for some managers before who've been nice people and care, but I've also worked for a lot more that don't even think beyond the end of their desk, frankly. Kur, what's the question? How likely is it that a manager is going to care?
Well, I think it depends a lot on a manager's own experiences with stress and pressure.
Right. Right.
If you really have experienced yourself some problems, then it's very easy to see that others struggle, and it's very easy to consider it important to help them and support them.
Mhm.
But in case you have been kind of a lucky and among those 13% who never experienced personal stress, then it's quite probable that you don't understand it and you don't care. However, I think every manager has seen exactly what Jacqueline said, that you see that people underperform. And I think every single manager or business leader is caring about underperformance.
Mm.
However, I think they totally addressing it wrong. You cannot just kick in another like a motivational training that let's do it, let's do it. If you build more positivity on negativity, then what you build is internal conflict. You have like a positive side,
Mhm.
and you have this negative side that is underlying, and that negative side is popping up. It's this negative side is not allowing you to be focused. And I can bring you a very simple example. For example, people say that stay focused.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to stay focused, if you don't even have a faintest idea what is a process alike, then how can you be focused?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say that it comes from also from our own school systems. We don't have a mental wellness education at schools. So naturally, when we don't know how to stay well, how to stay out from stress or how to keep stress away and how to recognize the signs of burnout, then it's very probable that we end up in a final stage of burnout, and it overlaps, for example, about 86 to 92% with depression, which means
Wow.
that we go to mental illness side. So the impact of mental illness very often at workplace is actually coming from lack of mental wellness.
Mm. It's interesting actually because I read a lot, and I was reading a book called Limitless by a guy called Jim Quick, and he says in there he had a brain injury when he was younger, couldn't learn in the normal way, had to teach himself how to learn. And we've talked about schools before, Jacqueline, I don't know about your perspective, but we don't even teach children how to learn. We just throw information at them.
Right.
Exactly. And when you look at kids who are very young, since they actually learn by listening and being aware of the situations.
Mm.
And being aware is actually same as being attentive or directing your attention. And we don't know how to direct our awareness or our attention. And that's one of the key failures in our school system. That we don't know how to learn. So I
Well,
agree totally with you.
this is interesting. Tomorrow's episode is going to look at COVID-19, but something I can add a perspective to is about working from home, which is the other aspect of probably the future of the work-life relationship. It's very interesting. It's less difficult, I think, if you have a target, because you either do or you do not. So motivation in and of itself isn't a problem for sales, but all of these people that are dealing with thousands of phone calls in call centers and service businesses and stuff like that, without the buzz of their friend to go, oh, bloody cool, I think is something which is, well, we'll discuss it in tomorrow's episode, because I think it's quite a big topic in itself. All right, listen, time goes by so fast. Everyone say goodbye. Bye, 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 bye,
Hi.
bye. Wow. So I knew myself the things that I've done in the pits of depression, but obviously we only have our own perspective, and so that was quite revealing. Tomorrow we're going to go on to talk about the impacts specifically which COVID has thrown up, because obviously the world isn't going back to the way it was. So tune in tomorrow, and you'll learn more information about getting some context, getting some perspective on mental health and mental illness. Okay, thanks a lot. I'll see you tomorrow.